Hey everybody, and welcome to Side Quest, the episodes we do on Authors and Dragons when we aren't actually playing Authors and Dragons. I'm Drew Hayes, and joining me today are Steve Wetherill, Rick Gualteri, and John Hartness. Say hello, boys.
Hello, boys.
Howdy.
Hello.
All right, and today we are going to talk about audiobooks, the production of them, the market for them. We're really just going to kind of go into them as a whole, and for those of you who guessed, hey, I wonder if this has anything to do with Shingles Volume 2 being released in audiobook recently. Yeah, you're right. But you know what you forgot about is I personally also have a new audiobook that's an Audible original coming out on June 13th, so the day after you're hearing this, and it's 5 Minute Sherlock, The Case of the Damaged Detective. So yeah, got a lot of audio shit to plug. So, we thought we'd actually drop some... Ooh, knowledge feels like I'm just way over-promising what we're going to deliver. Discussion. We'll drop some discussion.
Opinion?
Shall we get our audio plugs out of the way?
By all means.
Ka-chow, motherfuckers. Triple shill.
I thought we'd sprinkle them through like garlic or chlamydia or something else that everybody puts everywhere.
Just a shill twist at every turn, like M. Night Shyamalan.
Why don't we drop them in as we go through our individual sort of setups with audio? Because I bet we all have a little bit of a different move, although I know there's definitely going to be some overlap with me, Rick, and John in at least one area. So, Rick, why don't you go ahead and walk us through what your system for audiobooks is? How do you get audiobooks out? Because it is different, and especially as indies, we have, different options than a traditional system might use.
All right. Well, recently I've actually started producing with Tantor, and I'll probably let you run with that because you have the most experience with them. Although I will say it has been an awesome experience, just kind of handing the reins off to a group of professionals. A group of professionals who, by the way, just came out with Bent Out of Shape, The Hybrid of High Moon Book 2, narrated by Rachel Delude. However, I think the vast majority of my audiobooks have gone through ACX, and that's Audiobook Something Exchange. I don't know what the fuck the C stands for.
Creation.
Yeah, basically for the longest time until recently, it was the only place to go if you were an indie author and you didn't have a producer like Tantor and you wanted to do audiobooks. Recently, they got some competition in Findaway, but I haven't used them yet, so whatever. But yeah, I mean, pretty much you have a choice with ACX. You can either pay a narrator up front, or you could do rev share. For a while there, they used to do, which pretty much was like my big break. They used to do stipends in which somebody could come in and say, all right, I'll do rev share for your book, but ACX, in order to kind of pump up their audiobook catalog, would also pay them a set amount per hour, so they would kind of get the best of both worlds, which I think kickstarted a lot of people in audio. But
Holy shit! I never knew that was a thing.
I don't think they do it anymore.
No, I don't think they did it for very long either.
Oh no, they did it for quite a while. Like my first
about
5 books
that as a
had it.
thing.
Yeah.
Because my understanding is it's very hard to find someone to do royalty share. I don't have as much ACX involvement as you guys, so that's secondhand. But would you say that's a fairly true-ish rumor?
Nowadays, yes. Back like going back 5 years, it was actually pretty easy to find that because a lot of people were breaking into audiobooks and a lot of people were breaking into narration. So there was more of that feel of let's take a chance on each other. Nowadays, you pretty much have to have a proven track record if you want to get somebody to to do rev share. Like for example, the guy who works with me on my Toma Bill books, Chris Featherolf. We started off under a stipend, like rev share deal, and because the books have proven to be profitable, we've continued to work rev share. In fact, when we came out with Strange Days fairly recently this year. I went back to him and I was like, "Hey, do you want to rethink our deal? I mean, if you want me to pay you up front, I'm more than happy to do that." And he's like, "Dude, the rev share has been really good to me, with your books." He's like, "I see no reason to change that." And I'm like, "All right, cool,
But you're probably in a similar boat with him that I am with a couple of my narrators. You're either the only or one of a very few people that he'll do rev share for anymore.
Probably. That's why I say you kind of have to have a track record going there, because otherwise, I mean, you're basically asking somebody to record, to put in a lot of hours worth of work and probably pay for a sound engineer on the promise of nothing.
Yeah, it's a big ask, especially if you don't have any sort of record. Like, I don't begrudge narrators for wanting to go, pay per hour. That seems like a much more safe way to get compensated for your time and effort.
Oh yeah, not at all. I think that's like, the market has shifted to that. The good being that the bad being that if you haven't saved a few shekels, you're gonna get what you pay for there. But the good being you can, for relatively reasonable amounts. And I would say reasonable is maybe like $200 to maybe $300 an hour. You can get some really kick-ass talent out there.
I'm sure a lot of people listening just felt their hearts seize at the words $250 to $300 an hour. But yeah, that truly is, if you're looking at going this route, probably a good number to be starting with.
But let's also clarify that that's per finished hour. So that's per hour of finished audio. That's not like when you go to your job at the QT and you're working retail for $12 or $15 or $25 or $75 per hour of work.
Yeah, that is important, because ACX in that case kind of protects you. They don't let people screw around and be like, oh hey, well I just re-recorded everything because I didn't like how it did it. Now it's like 30 hours of audio for for 15 finished hours. They don't let people fuck around like that. You're paying for the finished product.
Yeah. And if you've got a shorter project, can go to your advantage. I paid up front for the Brandon Firemaster project. Turned out to be a good move, because it was a short book with a kind of ready-to-go audience. It made its investment back pretty quickly. So, swings and roundabouts.
All right, Rick, you got any more to speak on your own audio operation, or should we move to John?
I would just say I'll perfectly honest, I hate fucking doing audiobooks through ACX, only because. Well, one, for the longest time, ACX didn't have any competition. They've been good to me, so I don't want to shit on them. But for the longest time, they didn't have any competition. And it kind of shows by the fact that their website just really has not evolved in the last 5 years. But also, I'm going to tell you right now, the thing I hate most of my process is proofing audiobooks. I don't really listen to audiobooks myself. And thus, and by the time I release an audiobook, I'm so sick of editing my book that it is like almost physical torture for me to proof
it. I love it. It just gives me an excuse to laugh at my own jokes.
All right, John, so as a person who runs a publishing company, how does your audio setup kind of differ?
My audio setup actually doesn't differ from Rick's very much at all, except that there was a several-year gap between the first audiobook I recorded and the other 40 or 58 that I've produced. I did The Chosen in 2014, which that was my first book. I published it in 2010. And when I uploaded it and found a narrator and all that, the process was so clunky and so bad, and the user interface was just terrible, that I didn't want to fuck with it ever again. So I didn't do audiobooks for 3 years after that, which was probably the time that they started this whole pay people stipend thing, which is why I'd never heard of it. So when I got back into it, it was because a narrator emailed me out of the blue and said, hey, I read this Quincy Harker novella and I liked it. I want to do the audiobook for it. Can I? And I said, I don't know, sure, whatever. And it was James Foster, who's now narrated every Quincy Harker book for me, and was nominated for an Audie this year, and is amazing, and no longer takes royalty share projects because of all of those things. So just like Rick was saying, I got really lucky with a couple of my narrators, and either they brought me in or I brought them in early enough in the process that I've been able to get deals that they don't offer anymore. From a publisher standpoint, we're so small at Falstaff that we behave just like an indie author self-publishing audio. We go through the ACX platform. We hire people on a royalty share basis, which means for us, because we're a publisher, we have a little more juice than an author who's never released a book, but not that much. So nowadays we're working with a lot of first-time narrators and hoping that they'll get really popular, because people do follow narrators from project to project, and a good narrator will sell books just with their name on the cover. But yeah, we go through ACX for a lot of our stuff, and our process now with audio is once the book is done, I email our guy at Tantor and I say, hey, do you guys want to buy this audio? And when they say yes, I say, sweet, send me a contract. Here's the files. And then I don't worry about anything until it's time to split the advance with the author and the CDs show up on my doorstep. With a royalty split, there's a lot more to deal with. Like Rick said, you've got to proof it. You've got to design the cover. You've got to... And the cover for audiobooks should not just be the cover for your ebook with black bars on the side. It really does need to be reformatted at least, if it's not all new art. I'd rather do it reformatted because then it's got a similar visual look. There's a fair chunk of my early ones that are still the ebook cover with black bars on the side because I didn't know what the fuck I was doing.
You can change those, you know.
Yeah, I haven't figured all that out yet.
Well, you can't change them in interface because ACS's interface is like, stuck in 1990s.
Abysmal.
But if you email them and basically say, hey, I'm so-and-so, here's the title, here's the new file, name to your naming conventions, change this, they'll change it.
Oh, okay. I may go back and do that, but it's mostly the Singleton novellas that look awful. Most of the newer stuff and the full collections and all are better, if not great. That's another big thing of working with a company like Tantor or Podium or Recorded Books. They're your publisher. They do that for you. And time is money, so it's all about a cost benefit. For me, a lot of times, getting the book out more quickly is well worth giving up a piece of the royalties. James is so good that he's booked way out for royalty share projects. So Harker 3 took almost a year to get released in audio. Tantor paid him by the hour for Harker 4, and it came out in 4 months. So that's where you balance out, and he's doing the same thing. He's taking the per hour rate as opposed to long-term royalty earnings, but he's getting paid right away. So, yeah, my process is very similar to Rick's. It's just I'm looking at how many of 50 titles I release a year are getting audio.
All right. Steve, I'll probably be able to go for a bit. Do you have I know you've done the Brandon Thighmaster one. I guess, have you done anything outside of the stuff we've already kind of gone through?
No, most of my experience are ACX with guys kind of just getting into it, really looking to build up their portfolio. But I've been lucky with the quality of those guys. So just royalty shares and relying on their naivete.
Kind of like your publisher does to you, pal.
It cannot be overstated. A narrator is so important. A good one will elevate the work, and a bad one will definitely bring it down.
Yes, true. Yeah. I've gotten lucky with most of mine, but I have one or two out there where it's like, where I'm kind of like, okay, maybe I could have done that better.
Yeah, I'm learning a lot about what it takes to narrate as I'm trying to narrate my first audiobook.
Oh, really?
Oh, we're gonna touch on like big mistakes and recommendations for people down the road, but we'll go and touch on this one. Don't narrate your own audiobooks, everyone.
I agree. The book I'm
Yeah.
narrating, I didn't write.
Unless you have a background in narration or sound engineering.
And probably acting.
Well, I can speak from experience on that, having some background in sound engineering, and I guess this podcast is as close as I get to acting. But when I released Brandon Firemaster book, I also opted to release a me version as well, where I supplied the dialogue for Brandon Firemaster. And let me tell you, it was, despite kind of coming from an advantage of experience, it was a lot harder than you think it's going to be. And but so if you don't have any of those things, you don't have the experience, be prepared to do a lot of learning and spend a lot of time on it, and then realize afterwards that you should have just got a narrator to do it.
And dear God, do not record it on your fucking webcam microphone.
Oh, jeez. Yeah, it bears mentioning that John Hartness has what, decades of theater experience?
Yeah.
Yeah, not quite 30 years, but almost
Yeah.
30 years.
So a lot of practice actually learning the art of acting, which you want your book to be narrated by the best person possible. And the odds that that's you are basically zero.
Yeah.
Unless you know otherwise, and you'll know if you're the exception.
But oh my
And
God, some indies will fight you on that shit. You know?
Some indies will fight you on everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, they can fight me and be wrong all they want.
Yeah, they can't fight me on it because I don't give a fuck how wrong they are. But
Yeah. Biographies are sometimes the exception. That personal touch, even if you're not the most skilled, can be pretty relevant. But like anything fiction, no. Especially if there's a range of voices, fuck no. You do not have the training for that.
yeah.
It's a skill set. I know it seems easy. It's not.
Yeah.
It's also hard for actors. One of the narrators that I use, I know her from my theater days, and she and I've had conversations on how different it is and how hard it is just to keep track of all of the voices over 30 or 40, or if you're working on one of Drew's books, 500 hours of recording time.
Actually, that's a great segue into I'll talk about my process in Tantor, because we discussed the importance of narrators. So Kyle McCarley, who does the Superpowered series, that's a massive ass series for anybody who hasn't heard it, with tons and tons of cast. I truly did not think it was going to be a one person endeavor, but Kyle has a huge amount of voice acting background and work with cartoons and animation, so doing different voices all over the place. Through the course of the series, when he would get to a new book, he had this Excel spreadsheet with character names, descriptions, and then a vocal sample attached. And so I think almost every new book, if there was someone new in there, he would email me. He would email me an updated copy of the spreadsheet. We'd kind of go through. I'd make sure that there wasn't any, problems, things that were going to come later that would change what vocal tone were appropriate for this character or anything like that. And it was an amazing tool, but it was really cool to get to see inside of his process of okay, so this is how he's keeping all of these dozens of characters straight.
Nice.
I thought that was really cool just to kind of see.
Did he do Corpies too?
He did everything in the Superpowered world, and if I ever do more with those characters, God willing, well, actually Kyle McCarley willing, it's his choice. So that would definitely be the one. I would absolutely want him to stay the voice of the character. So
well, you bring up a really good point about the more upfront before the recording starts communication you can have with your narrator, the better.
That's one thing I do love about Tantor is they clearly encourage it, because I've had the narrators reach out to me when appropriate, several times, and they've all been wonderful people, and I enthusiastically endorse all of them. But it is really cool that it's definitely a system where it's okay, and I guess they're encouraged, I presume.
Apparently, because I've gotten emails from almost every narrator I've had with Tantor as well.
So I'll talk about Tantor, I guess. So Rick, John, and I all use Tantor Audio. They are a production company. How that functionally works on our end is, as John said it, I send my guy an email at the beginning of the year. I'm like, hey, these are the books I'm going to do. Which of these do you want? They'll say these. We do a contract. I write my book. I finish. I polish. They don't really get it until I get to like final manuscript. If I was doing a new series, it might be different because we would have to kind of shop a narrator, but all of the things are kind of smoothed out by now. So I'll just send over the manuscript, and then a few months later, I will get CDs at my door and an audiobook in the Audible and all the other markets. It is so smooth and so easy and so wonderful, but part of the reason it's such a relaxing and easy experience is because I've spent years and years building up trust with Tantor. They have time and time again proven that they will do good work. They will pair me with good people. You know, they give a shit about the final product. And anytime you're trusting somebody to adapt your work at any capacity, do your research. Like, we love Tantor, but you best believe I Googled the shit out of them before I signed anything.
And you'd better believe that Rick and I grilled the shit out of Drew before we signed anything.
Yeah.
Because the truth of the matter is, I know a lot of people who've gone with Tantor, and not all of them have had I think they've always produced quality books, but not every audiobook is going to sell. So so there's a lot of kind of disgruntled you're going to hear out there of I sold them my books and now they don't sell. And it's like, well,
Well, your books don't sell in ebook and print either, so I think the fault probably is on you, baby.
Well, yes and no. Some books just don't translate to another medium well.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm not going to sit here and say that there's no possibility they've never produced a bad book. I'm not here to advocate for Tantor specifically, but it's just I can only speak to my own experience, and my own experience with them has been outstanding and fair, and it's the kind of relationship I value, and that's why I continue to work with them constantly. So I mean,
the thing I like about my relationship with Tantor is I sign something and they send me some money, because that is the extent of my involvement with Shingles.
And sometimes CDs. Let me tell you guys how blown away I am by the fact that I have the Shingles both audio collections on CD in my house. Because that's the one thing you don't get with ACX. ACX is awesome, but the fact that that we did this audiobook and then the mail actual CDs. I don't know if anybody uses CDs anymore. I don't even have CD players on my cars anymore, but it doesn't matter. It's just awesome that I have a box full of CDs with Shingles Volume 1 and 2.
I donate mine to libraries. They tend to be appreciative of CDs, although I don't know if Shingles is the appropriate one.
I am most likely, assuming I don't forget them, but I am most likely going to be bringing mine to Vegas for Authors and Dragons Con in September. Tickets are on sale now. To kind of maybe do some giveaways with them.
Yeah.
Surprise shill.
Yeah, Tantor really deserves credit for taking the risk on publishing Shingles Volume 1 and then coming back and doing Volume 2, because holy shit.
Yeah, they got some balls.
Well, not only that, but doing Volume 2 enthusiastically.
Yeah. So God bless Tantor. You're not going to hear a lot of bad stuff from him on this podcast. But I do have, so I've done one book through ACX, but you guys covered that really well. Like, obviously I prefer Tantor because of the time investment. I wouldn't be able to have the audiobook output I do if I wasn't doing it through Tantor. But I do have one more production avenue that we haven't gone through yet, and that's Audible Originals. So Audible as a company is launching a publishing branch. They have been for years. It's not new, but you get what I'm saying. They're building a publishing wing. And as part of that, they've been reaching out to some authors and doing Audible Originals, where they act as the publisher. They do edits, they do promotion. Like, they really act as a publisher for the book, but only the audio version, individual to everybody's own deal. So with Secondhand Curses, it was just an audiobook, and then I indied the ebook and print version. It comes in exclusive to Audible for 6 months, meaning no print, no ebook, which I am truly okay with from a philosophical standpoint, because every other series, my audio listeners have to wait, just by nature of the game, because I finished the print version first, and then you have to wait for the narrators to do their work. It truly couldn't come any other way. But I like that this one puts a focus on giving them the copy first, and then everyone else gets it later. So it is nice to be able to, put them at the forefront for at least one avenue or one series now. So that's what 5 Minute Sherlock is it's a series I'm launching with Audible. The first one I did was Secondhand Curses. 5 Minute Sherlock is the next one. So, just back to the process. It is genuinely like working with a publisher. I write, we do edits, we come to a mutually agreed upon final manuscript. I do have input on narrator and cover and whatnot. 5 Minute Sherlock will be done by Scott Aiello, who was a voice on Secondhand Curses, and I love the work of, and I'm really excited to hear what he does. Narrator, control, big one, obviously.
Who was he on Secondhand Curses?
He was Frank.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
But that does bring to mind, just backing up to Tantor. If you're going to do a deal with Tantor, and they reach out to you and stuff, ask for narrator and cover approval.
Yep.
Mm.
Because like any publisher, they're not going to offer that off the bat because it's more work on their end. But like any reputable publisher, if you ask for reasonable concessions, they're going to give it to you because it's a reasonable ask. If you don't know anything about covers and you've never listened to an audiobook to know anything about narrators, you probably won't know to ask. But if you're smart enough to actually vet a narrator, then you'll know to ask.
Yeah. I would also add to that, be a good client. If you are going to ask and get that, be a good client. Nothing sours a relationship more than just than asking for something, getting it, and just being a total douche with it.
Yeah, if you don't like the narrators that they're putting forth, maybe spend some time on their website and listen to narrators that you like.
And by the same token, be open to new people, because you might have a favorite one in mind or someone you think's a great fit, but they do a fairly good job of aligning the right people with the right project. So, even if you have your heart set on one thing, that might not work out. Maybe you've done too much narrator research. But be open and trust that they are at least sending you talent, even if you don't agree it's the right fit for the project. Give them a fair shake.
Yeah, don't be a dick.
Yeah, don't be a dick is a good general rule.
I like your thing with Audible, releasing to audio fans first, because one thing I have noticed is I'm not gonna, and ebook fans can definitely be passionate, but holy crap, audiobook fans, they will let you know that they want the fucking audiobook, and they will not be shy about it.
They are. They're an underserved market.
Drew, one question for you about your work with Audible.
Sure.
When you write the book for Audible and then go back and release it for digital, for ebook and print, with Secondhand Curses, there were 3 narrators for the 3 main characters, so you had multiple voices that people very easily bounced between. Do you find yourself needing to cut dialogue tags for the audio manuscript and adding them back in for the ebook and print manuscript?
Yes, that's in fact exactly what we did. So if you look at the audio script for Secondhand Curses, there are not a lot, but there are several dialogue tags that are put in red. And that simply meant to the narrators, don't read this. It's exclusively for the print version. We recognize that in the audio version, it will not be necessary and would in fact just take away from the thing. So that was a great thing of working with Audible, is we really structured Secondhand Curses to be capable of working with multiple narrators in that way.
Yeah, because I've listened to some audiobooks that were print first, like mine, like Rick's. Not those specific, that's not where these cases come from, but sometimes it just sounds like there's a dialogue tag every fucking where.
Moving into audio has made me so much more conscious of dialogue tags in general. I've pulled a lot of them out of my writing now.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I still have plenty in there, but before versus after going through the audio process a couple of times, I try to I try to be a little more stingy with those, where if there's 2 people talking, something, let them talk, and maybe once in a blue moon throw in an action there so you know which one is doing, in case you you lost track of that.
Yeah, I really started liking actions over tags because it allows you to add more to the scene anyway. Okay, so we've talked about our individual processes for audiobooks. So at least the folks will have an understanding of what we're talking about when we reference maybe certain companies or tactics. So let's talk about more audiobooks in general. So, kind of kicking off with what I pounced on with John, we'll count that as mine. What is a major mistake you see in audiobooks happening a lot that you would correct? Like mine is, please God, unless you are very specifically trained and skilled and knowledgeable, don't narrate your own audiobook. Don't do that to yourself. What other like big no-nos do you see people throwing around a lot?
I would say shelling out a bucket of money for really good audio quality, really good production, good narrator, and then not doing any audio specific marketing. Because, yeah, the audiobook market is underserved and they are starving, but they still have to know that your shit exists. And you don't necessarily market an audiobook in all of the same places that you market a print book or an ebook. So trying to treat it like it's just an ebook or a print book and market it exactly the same way. I feel like that's a mistake a lot of people make.
Yeah. I would say I've seen some authors just drive themselves a little nuts, just being like too anal, that that every word must match. Like I'll look when I'm working with Chris, and I'm listening to things. If he says something that fundamentally changes the meaning of a line, obviously I'm going to go back and correct that. If there's a missing word or so that changes stuff. But I mean, little things that might just be kind of artistic flair. Like if I have a line that says, hey, it's like, yo man, fuck that noise, and maybe it's like, yo man, fuck that. I might not go back and and change that because it fundamentally doesn't change the line. And I mean, I've had some author friends who will go back and they will red line minutia, and I think that's a good way to drive yourself nuts.
Yeah, I got an email from James on Harker 4, and the crux of the email was, after 5 years and 16 novellas, now you use one line to mention that Harker has a slight British accent. I was like, huh. I mean, he's always had a little British accent in my head, but I may not have ever told you that. So I emailed him back and said, hey, cut that line. He said, I have to ask Tantor if I can cut that line.
Go back and re-record all of it, dang it.
Good news, Steve. We've got a job for you.
So yeah, I just emailed him and said, yeah, we can cut that line.
That is a good. I think people don't always realize, but when you are creating when you are creating an audiobook with a narrator, you are sort of making another version of your book that won't be quite the same because you have another artist layering their own interpretations and skills onto it. That's why it can really make a book better or worse depending on what they're adding.
Absolutely.
I don't think it pays to get too precious about the vision in your head versus the interpretation of another artist in any medium at all. And audio, certainly, if they've got a voice that you didn't quite envision was the correct voice for a character, but it works for them, the only person who's going to think that voice sounds wrong is you, because no one else can hear the voice in your head. So, yeah, don't be too precious about it.
Well, yeah, like with C.C. Hogan, who did the narration for us on The Last Volunteer. He did a fantastic job, and he did a lot of voices. But I bet a lot of those characters sounded very different when he performed them than they did in your head.
Oh, yeah, totally. I mean, I've had that same experience with pretty much every book I've done. And most of the time, it's kind of like, oh, well, that's not a voice I had in my head. And I think, yeah, but it is a good voice. And it probably is better than the voice that I had in my head. So
I can't tell you all the times that Chris has changed the inflection on jokes in my books the way I've heard it, and it really ticks me off when his are better than mine.
Yeah, because I mean, Hogan put a lot of thought into the accents that he used and tied the character's status and all that to the status in the real world of the accents he was using and all of that. And I was like, wow, I've never thought about any of that in my books in my life. Rock on, buddy.
Yeah, and it all worked nicely, especially for me, who didn't kind of put that much thought into the accents my characters were speaking with. So I guess they all sort of, when I was writing that, probably just sounded a bit like me. But
God.
But CC Hogan, he really kind of separated that out kind of quite dramatically, which obviously isn't as much a necessity when it's written down on the paper, but for an audiobook certainly is. So,
and that's another nod towards not doing your own audiobook. I mean, just hearing the range of voices a good narrator can bring. Because I'm with you. Like I've done multiple readings of my like chapters of my books for my YouTube channel and stuff. And yeah, every character sounds like a different variation of Rick.
And who wants to listen to that for 11 hours?
Fuck, I don't want to listen to that for 11 hours.
Yeah, just fooling around doing my audio blogs every month. Sometimes I have to do voices because they'll pick something that's kind of character-y driven, and I'm like, oh god, I have to go back and like re-record 3 times because I'll just drop it like on paragraph 2 for no reason. I'm like, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've noticed, Drew. You have like pretty much 2 voices. You have Drew and Clammy Hands Edgar.
No, I also have a high-pitched one.
Judge Hungry's different. So he's got like 4.
And Gunther's just kind of a stony one.
There you go.
Look at that. That's like 5 voices. What do you want? You want more than that? What are you, fucking spoiled?
You want more than that? Call Chris. Yeah, we switched narrators for Bubba after season 1 because the narrator that we had for season 1 no longer wanted to work on royalty share, and I still didn't want to pay up front. So the narrator, John Solo, who's done a bunch of books with me, his Bubba books sound very different than they do in my head. They're still funny as fuck, but it took some adjustment to make that transition for me. I mean, it took all of 15 minutes because I don't proof my own audiobooks. I have a friend who does that. I farm it out. So that helped because I didn't actually listen to the whole thing. I've never listened to any of my audiobooks in their entirety.
I've done the majority of mine, and I suck at it because I don't listen to audiobooks natively. So I have missed a lot of shit simply because I'll be listening and my mind will just wander, and I will like suddenly realize, oh wait, that's like a whole chapter I just missed. I'm sure it's okay.
Another plug for working with Tantor.
Weirdly, I love nonfiction audiobooks, like a good biography or like a history thing. Can't do fiction. Gives me a headache. No real clue why. Just, I guess, trying to keep it all straight in my head. I prefer to read at my own pace. So, Steve, I think you have probably some of the most sound background from us. Any big mistakes you see in audio from a sound engineering perspective?
No. The art of audiobook audio compared to, say, something like a radio drama audio is to strip it right down to absolute basics. Possibly the only, I guess, apparent flaws you see with audiobook narrators, because they've obviously tackled the obvious stuff like background noise or any mic hiss or any pops. They usually have a good setup in terms of protecting the mic from their mouth noises and making sure they've drank water so they don't make any weird mouth noises like I just did there. And I think the only, normally their positioning is great and the soundproofing's fine. Normally it's just a case of being overly bassy or overly trebly and getting the balance in there. And that's going to be different for every every narrator. So there's no silver bullet for that. It's just experience and preference as well. People might prefer a bassier voice. Yeah, most of the time when I hear a narrator, their technical setup and getting that kind of invisible, no frills, basic but high quality and clear recording, they normally tick those bases quite well. And if they haven't, because there are no distractions like you'd have in a radio drama, it becomes very apparent very quickly. So normally, I think anybody who goes onto ACX or something, if they're getting somebody who knows even remotely what they're doing, it will become very apparent very quickly if they don't. So from a technical aspect, I don't think I've ever heard a narrator audition who doesn't tick the boxes of technical quality.
I
It's
have.
all about performance.
I have.
Yeah. One more vote in the column of I know it looks easy, but it's not. Please don't do this yourself.
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten like auditions that range the gamut. Like some, it's like holy shit, they sound engineered this whole friggin' audition, and others sounds like they recorded on their cell phone.
On the subway.
That's weird.
Yeah.
I've never had a less than technically perfect audition. I've had narrators I didn't like, but no bad sound quality at all.
Yeah. That's because I didn't send those to you for approval for last time.
But you'd be
Yeah.
surprised about little things like making dry mouth noises and making sure that your window isn't fucking open so you can hear the traffic. You'd be surprised by how many people just don't kind of get this. There was a podcast I missed the other week because I was at a friend's house and we couldn't get his computer set up, and I think he was too drunk to get it set up. But he was saying to me, "Okay, I'm going to need you to leave the room." And he's like, "No, I'll just be in here with my friend and we'll just be talking." I'm like, "Did you just forget how physics work?" But it's amazing to me that because I did a film course and sound was kind of the unsexy thing to be into in the film course. Everybody wanted to be the cameraman. But the projects that won and the projects that looked good and kind of stood up were the ones where they'd taken sound seriously. And we'd be filming something and we'd go, "Oh, we're going to film under this bridge." And I'd say something as basic as, "If we film under this bridge, there's going to be a shitload of reverb." And they're like, "Oh, yeah, I didn't think about that." Because people only consider their environment with the human ear rather than a recorded ear. So everything that people take for granted in just having a clean recording takes a lot of work and a lot of know-how, which is why I was surprised that I never had a technically bad recording, but apparently they are out there.
Yeah,
Well, they're definitely out there.
Yeah, they're out there in force, I think.
Well, and
I think I've just been lucky.
And I guess for narrators, it's just like all of us, because over the time that we've been learning to do this podcast, we've all made plenty of upgrades to our environment where we're recording. I say, as I'm looking at the new boom and shock mount that I put into my office a few months ago, because Steve got tired of every time I moved on my desk having to edit some fucking background noise. And
Yes.
but we expect them to get all of that shit figured out before they audition for us, whereas you poor bastards had to listen to us for years as we figured it out.
Yeah.
But then again, it's a free podcast, so
Right.
Fuck you guys.
payment quality does come into it there.
We are 6 guys in 6 very different environments recording over a single Skype feed. So it's not one guy in a booth.
It's a free podcast, but if you subscribe to our Patreon and we actually use those funds to make the podcast better and better.
And when we started off, we were 6 guys on 3 continents recording this fucking thing.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, so I was talking to someone about A&D, and they asked me, is a podcast profitable? And I was like, I honestly don't know. We just invest everything right back into it.
Yeah, I mean, this one
Might
isn't,
be.
but I'm sure some are.
Yeah.
When we finally make J.K. Rowling money, yes, at that point we are profitable.
We'll get that cocaine statue tier going someday.
Yeah, I'm sure all these retired wrestlers who have podcasts now aren't doing it out of the goodness of their heart. But until Podcast One sends us a big fat offer and sets us up in an LA studio once a week to play D&D and fuck off with our friends, yeah, we roll it all back into making the podcast better. So if you want us to get that J.K. Rowling cocaine statue, buy all our audiobooks.
Or just a general shill there. I like it. Okay, so that's sort of a mistake. Let's kind of transition to talking about the audio market in general, because it is fascinating from an author publisher perspective. It's sort of like a micro ebook market. Oh, pardon me. In that it basically all the same stuff is at play in a lot of ways. There's no KU per se, but you get a lot of the same authors and everything, but you also get a lot less because not every ebook gets an audiobook, especially in the indie world where you have to jump through all these hoops or, get lucky enough to make this like kind of Tantor connection to have someone producing it. So there's a big gap in the number of books on the ebook store versus the Audible store, which simply means it's easier to get momentum and notice because, smaller pond.
Yeah, no, that's 100% true. It's also the fastest growing segment of the book buying population for the past 3 years.
So 100%, I double checked my numbers. For the past 2 years, I have sold more audiobooks than ebooks.
Wow.
And you're not the only friend of mine that's the case. I've got a friend who's traditionally published that has sold more audiobooks than his major New York release.
Yeah. I can 100% believe that. Like, audio it's a booming market, and we've talked about, like, because it's so underserved, if you make it a point to make them a point, the audio audience will take notice. Like, they are a discerning crowd. They can see who's putting in the effort to accommodate them and, like, get that content to them and who's not. And as the market grows, people tend to remember that kind of shit.
Yeah, I mean, ebooks are still king for me, but I mean, audio is not insignificant. I think audio is like 30% of my business at this point, and I mean, print doesn't even print is almost at this point kind of like I like to have print just because it's nice to have, but print doesn't even compare to that. The other platforms don't compare to that. It's like it's Kindle, Audible, and everything else is like pocket change.
Yeah, like print is something I offer as a courtesy to my readers who like print. It is not a thing that I do and expect to be an income stream.
Mm.
Now, a lot of people... No, go ahead.
I was just going to agree with your point. I'd say even for me, of the kind of sales visibility I have, I wouldn't say I sell more audiobooks than ebooks because I've got lots more ebooks than audiobooks, but I probably make about as much money from audiobooks as I do ebooks. So there's a kind of a larger profit element there. Definitely more bang for buck.
That said, just before anybody thinks that audio is like an automatic money machine, not all genres do as well in audio.
Yeah, I was about to jump in on let's talk about like probably one of the reasons we can point to as to why I have seen explosive growth in the audio market is a feature unique to the audio market.
Your books are long as fuck.
My books are long as fuck. That's exactly it. So I'm going to say Audible and audio market interchangeably because let's face fucking facts, they are. At this point, I'm not necessarily comfortable with it, but it is what it is.
Well, again, find a way is like, they're trying to claw themselves a place, and they even have a BookBub partnership going on.
Oh no, I'm not talking about ACX like creation. I'm just talking about where people buy their audiobooks.
Oh, okay,
that's why I'm just using Audible interchangeably with Audio Market.
No, okay. Sure.
Yeah. Because it's fucking crushing it. So because of the unique system of Audible, it really does impact a lot of the audio market. That credit system, that everybody has a credit, everything costs a credit. The cost is consistent, basically. Like there's a sale here and there, but let's be honest, most of us are paying with credits. So when everything costs the same, when you flatten it out in a way that ebooks never have and print definitely never has, it gets interesting because quantity suddenly turns into a real heavy factor alongside quality. I've often said, like, I'm sure there are people who only kind of liked Superpowered, like maybe a 5 out of 10 at best, but read the whole damn thing just because for 5 credits you get like a week of content. So even if it's like a 5, you're like, fuck it, I'll go all the way through.
Yeah.
Drew, for 1 credit on Superpowered's 4, you got a fucking week of content. That thing was 40 plus hours.
Yeah. You could start on a Friday at noon and then finish Sunday midnight. So only 1 weekend.
Yeah. Well, that brings to mind one good thing of the barrier to entry that is audio is like for all the game playing you see on Kindle Unlimited in the Kindle store and stuff, you don't really see that same game playing because it just simply is not, I guess, economical to do. Like, you
Yeah.
know, like it doesn't make I mean, you see some of these content mills, like, you know, people paying like, you know, ghostwriters like in the Philippines to churn out books and stuff. Well, you know something, they can like, you know, do that on Kindle. It doesn't quite translate to audio. So you
No,
have,
that's
so I think you
100%
you end
correct.
up with a much cleaner market there.
Yeah, I mean, I guess there's just an automatic barrier to fuckery built in, just simply because there are those hoops to jump through.
Well, in the same way that the pricing system emphasizes that, quantity quality thing, it doesn't diminish quality by any meaning. It kind of just emphasizes quantity, because if everything costs the same again, quality really does matter, because, you know, you get one audiobook a month, one credit a month. If
Yes.
you don't have like throwaway dog shit, like, you know, Penny Dreadful, whatever your guilty throw, you know, $2 for this, what have you thing, you don't really have that in audio, because
Mhm.
everything is weighted the same. You don't have, who gives a shit, this'll be nothing, even if I hate it. You know, it's maybe harder to take risks.
Now,
A
again-
little,
now,
but that also, see, I've written and published a lot of audiobook novellas, which are one of the very few places where you can still take those risks, because everything's priced based on the length. Novellas are short, so they're like $4 for a
Gotcha.
novella. And that way, I've gotten a lot of fans who were able to take a flyer on the first Quincy Harker novella. And the first, well, the Bubba stuff was all done as collections to start. But that's about the only place. So these people who, like Rick said, they're content mills churning out 85, 95,000 word books that get dumped into KU and make all their money on page reads. That's too expensive to come in on to produce an audiobook, and it's too long to get the cheap price. It's still going to be a $17 or $21 audiobook, so it's a full credit. People will blow real cash on $4 or $5.
now the market might be changing. I know I keep bringing up Findaway, but they're worth, because one of the things they are allowing, or at least apparently testing, is allowing authors to price their own audiobooks. So we might be seeing the genesis of, like, you know, of the race to the bottom, the 99-cent audiobook. I really hope not. And I think people are going to find that that paying $2,000 for production and then putting out an audiobook for 99 cents, you got to move a fuckload of those to make a difference.
So, Rick, one thing, and I could be wrong about this, and if so, I apologize. Do not take this as gospel. Anyone listening, do your own research. But I actually was at a recent conference, and I'm fairly certain we had someone from Findaway talk on this. And so an interesting dynamic is, yes, while I believe you can set your price on Findaway and all the outlets they utilize, that doesn't mean Audible is going to respect that price.
That is true. And if you're locked into
Audible, if you go, because when they go to Audible, they go like us, like they just go and say, please list this. Like, so I don't think they have, and again, my apologies to Findaway if I'm remembering this wrong and I'm misrepresenting their services. But I don't think they had the capacity to guarantee that whatever price you picked would be that for Audible, probably for this very reason, that Audible is really controlling their garden.
The thing though is you can I guess start eating away at that garden. Like if they're going to, I mean, because there's other big places. I mean, if Findaway has a deal with iTunes, you know, that's a huge market right there.
Not anymore.
Well, also
No, iTunes is still around. They actually did not announce it was going away.
Oh, wow. The fact that everybody didn't care kind of means maybe they should have.
But again, what I'm saying is, one of the problems with Audible is huge, but one of the problems is they've kind of been complacent for the last couple of years because they haven't really had, you know, that competition. And if that competition comes in and starts eroding that walled garden, you know, I'm just saying it's something to think about. You know,
Well,
rather
we're not going to be the ones to make those choices.
Yes.
No, we're not.
I would say it would seem. I would see it going that as soon as somebody can set their own prices, you're not going to have people spending $2,000 on a production. It's going to be a lot of people narrating their own shit with mouth noises and fucking traffic noises, and there's just going to be a lot of gash out there.
And it might end up making the walled garden look nicer by comparison, because it suddenly becomes, all right, you can go take your risk in this Wild West, but everything here has hit like a certain measure of quality.
Yeah, there is something to be said about, like, you know, if I'm in KU and I pick up a book and it's no good, I mean, hey, you know, I might finish it, I might not, you know, whatever. But if I spent 99 cents on an audiobook that sucks, am I going to invest 10 hours into that?
Hell no.
Fuck no. You're gonna
I
bail.
don't know, man.
You're gonna bail as soon as you hear that like wind chamber sound. You know that shitty audio, like all that fucking crap.
I don't know, man. We live in a society where cheap and it's here seems to work for a lot of people. It's cheap, it's here.
Yeah. It's unfortunate, but
Yeah,
No, it's very
possible.
unfortunate.
Yeah,
The
it's
market
just
will do what it'll do.
yeah, it's just I'm just saying for us and anybody who's getting into audiobooks, it's something to pay attention to. Just keep your eyes open which direction the market is going.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that is absolutely true in every aspect of publishing. Always be looking at where this shit's heading.
and just like so many aspects of indie and small press publishing, never underestimate the marketing power of the great Amazon. Because those motherfuckers know how to sell books and they know how to push audiobooks. They don't, however, know how to tell anybody when your shit's going on sale on Audible.
Oh God, yeah.
I think most of us have gotten that email from a fan or a Facebook message from one of the others on the podcast saying, hey, your thing's on sale on Audible. And you're like, hey, great. I wonder how long it's been on sale. Maybe I should tell my newsletter.
Yeah, they kind of blow at that.
Yeah.
But I think in all fairness, I think they kind of blow for all of that, because I remember the one daily deal I got, I didn't know until halfway through the day. You know, like Prime Reading, like they kind of tell you when it's going to be, but they kind of don't tell you when it's going to start.
Oh, they didn't tell me a goddamn thing about when it was going to be. They just said, hey, do you want to do this? And I clicked the button, and 2 days later it was in. I was like, oh.
Yeah, but you think they would,
okay.
because I mean, hey, you know, if people are like are priming their like their email lists and shit. But But speaking of email lists, we should probably get back to marketing audiobooks.
Actually, I can.
Well-
Let me touch on that one, because I've got a specific one I can touch. Is the working directly with Audible. We were kind of just bemoaning the amount of power, but the flip side is when you do an Audible original, and you know, you have the company who runs it invested in making it successful, you do get marketing. I've had friends send me screenshots of like 5 Minute Sherlock showing up in their actual ads, which is fucking mind blowing. Like, because it's not in any way connected to me. That's just Audible doing that. Secondhand Curses.
I've gotten that book specifically refer in my you should buy this.
Fuck yeah.
I
So
didn't.
Secondhand Curses was responsible for, I think, the highest point of my audio career in terms of just general ranking. Because I was the deal of the day for Audible, I think sometime in early January. And that was insane. I mean, that was a 6-month-old book at this point, and I think I got to number 2 on the Audible charts across all of them, not in a category, the whole fucking thing. And that's not really an accomplishment on my part. I was the deal of the day. But
Well, still, I mean, think that's an author friend of mine recently got deal of the day going through Tantor, and I mean, I'm not going to disclose her stuff, but she moved a fuckload of audiobooks.
yeah, it's a kick-ass thing. And I mean, you can absolutely get it through other means and whatnot, but you know, it doesn't hurt to have that company invested in you. I love working with Audible. I've had a great experience doing Audible originals. That's why I came back to do a series with them. But you know, I do kind of always have to acknowledge the power structure that exists.
Oh, yeah. I mean, a friend of mine made it to #1 on the Amazon charts. He screenshot that shit where his name and picture were over J.K. Rowling. Yeah, his book's published by 47 North, which is owned by Amazon, and it was one of the Amazon first reads that's free for a month to everyone who has Prime. He moved a fuck ton of books.
Yeah.
All free.
Yeah, it's like
all promo.
Ooh.
No pay.
Mine were not free.
Yeah,
Score.
One could argue that maybe we're getting that, like, you know, it might be a dangerous thing when, like, the people who are selling are also in the production game, and it definitely, like, doesn't level the playing field. But I guarantee if either of those places, like, you know, ever calls me and says, hey Rick, you want to, like, you know, want to work together, you know, the answer is fuck yeah.
Yeah, I'm in.
It's a hard one to say no to. It's pretty good.
Well,
Pretty good
we're all
thing.
giant whores, so
Yeah.
what do you expect?
Well, at the end of the day, I truly do, you know, believe in my books. I write the best story I can. That's how I can, you know, stand and say, I think you should read this. And so, yeah, things that give me better access and better marketing and create better works. Like, you know, as much fun as the marketing stuff is, I loved working with Audible because Secondhand Curses was something unique. I'd never thought I would get to do, like, that level of intricate audio work of 3 different narrators working together. Like, that was just fucking cool to me.
Oh yeah, same here.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm going to put out the same good book regardless, but I'd be a lot happier if I was putting out that same good book with somebody who has, like, you know, a huge marketing machine behind it.
Yeah.
But not everybody gets an Audible daily deal. So why don't we talk about more layman's ways of promoting audio?
So you mean what you and I do? I mean, obviously, I promote our audiobook releases. I promote them in our Fall Staff newsletter. I promote them on this podcast. I talk to people about them at conventions. But one of the effective things for me with promoting audiobooks has been Facebook ads. You can target very tightly to an audiobook buying market, and I don't go as deep into ads as some folks, Rick, but I run 3 that rotate through, and they're dynamic ads, so they've each got 10 different images and 5 different headlines and 5 different text boxes, and the Bubba and Harker ads are driven specifically for audiobooks. And I cut them off for a month because I wanted to know if they were actually selling anything. I didn't make it the whole month. My audiobook sales dropped too much. I turned that shit right back on. I saw a 20% drop in my audiobook sales for the 3 weeks I had those ads turned off.
Damn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even running, like, a cheap $5 a day ad,
Which
like,
is
you know,
what I run.
yeah, is gonna be worth it, because I love the dynamic ads, because right now the ones I'm running have been a little pricier, but in the past I've gotten those down to below, like, you know, 10-cent CPC, and, you know, if you're running a cheap ad and it's cheap CPC, you're still getting a lot of clicks and a lot of sales, and those have been like, you know, multi-thousand like, you know, audiobook months.
Yeah, I do those. I run those for $5 a day, and they hover between 12 and 15 cents CPC, cost per click. So they've been very effective. And I know Steve has just shared some posts and done some posts and boosted posts on the Last Volunteer audio, and I've seen a positive blip in sales when that's happened. Last Volunteer is one of our most popular audiobooks that we've released.
That is nice to hear.
Let me ask a question. Are you running your ads primarily for audiobook collections or single audiobooks?
Well, right now, so my world's a little different. I don't have any of the big audiobook collections, like you have 2 Tome of Bill collections, I think. I don't have any of those big 30 and 40 hour collections yet. So they've been Bubba Season 1 and Harker Season 1, which are 12-hour collections of novellas and shorts. But I just today did the cover art and approved the box set for Bubba season 1 through 3, which is 50 hours of audio. And once that's for sale, I'm going to switch all of my links over to promoting that specifically, because I think there's a big jump there. When we talked to Eric Asher on the Self-Publishing Like a Motherfucker podcast, he said that was the watershed moment for him, was when he released the box set of the first 3 of his Vesic books.
Yeah, I believe it. I mean, the audio box sets, those make such a wonderful headline on Facebook. I mean, you can do things like, hey, 40 hours for a credit, 4 books for a credit, all sorts of things that that just make it look super tasty. The dynamic ads will kind of optimize for you between your various images and headlines and stuff. And yeah, it's probably right now, my top place to do audio. That said, I would say for anybody who has audio, no matter where you're advertising your ebooks, make sure you let people know that audio is available for them. Because that's usually the one thing I see the most is is somebody's like, oh, hey, I saw your ads and stuff. Oh, wait, I didn't know you had audio. It's like, yeah, tell people this shit,
Yeah, it's like I'm pointing you to the Amazon page, which lists every available format of the book: paperback, ebook, hardcover, audiobook. They don't notice. Drive it straight to Audible. Just send it to Audible.
That's a very good rule. Audible is where, I mean, it truly is just where people default to. Like sometimes the Tantor pre-order things will show just the CDs for a little bit until they have the audio or the Audible link and everything. And man, people are always worried it's not going to be on Audible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, no, guys, we're going to go to the biggest audio market for sure. Don't worry.
It's like, yes, I've decided that after 58 Audible releases, that this one I'm not going to release on Audible.
Well, speaking of marketing, and I keep going back and beating the dead elephant. It's not a dead elephant, but I keep beating the elephant of Findaway. Apparently, Findaway has a partnership with BookBub, who are kind of one of the big names in marketing and I think they're betaing the program now for marketing audiobooks. I haven't really looked into it. I don't have any books with Findaway, and so far, when you go there and say, "Oh well, I'm just with ACX," to kind of go away with you, leper. But
hey, Rick, just checking. Did you get some money from Findaway you need to disclose or anything?
No, I've just been seeing them. Here's the thing. I first heard about them last year, and it was just kind of like, okay, this is new and interesting, whatever the fuck, I don't care. Because they sounded more like a Tantor, but I've been hearing more and more about them. And apparently they're making a push to try to be a legit rival to ACX, which to date ACX really has not had a legit rival. And I just like mentioning this because they're actually taking steps to make this happen, which a lot of previous quote unquote wannabe rivals have not. They've just kind of faded into oblivion. Whereas Findaway kind of seems like it might potentially be a rival. They're making a lot of authors perk up and be like, okay, maybe this is something to look into. Like I said, beyond that, I don't know, but I've seen a ton of chatter in the author business about them, and believe me, if I was getting a cut of it, I would be interrupting every one of your fucking sentences to say Findaway.
Rick's like, look, am I wearing a Findaway shirt right now? Maybe. Is there a Findaway boat parked in my garage? I don't know. These are questions. I don't have to provide answers.
Yeah, because the truth of the matter is, ACX has been good to me. The vast majority of my audiobook sales have come through ACX, and I'm going to continue to work with them because I know the system. And as I said, it's even though their reports are like fucking hieroglyphics, I do know that a nice check arrives every month.
As much as we're teasing Rick, I do want to clarify, competition on platforms in the ebook and audio market is a great fucking thing, and I am 100% for it.
Absolutely, and I've looked at Findaway off and on for 3 or 4 years when I first heard about them, and because they don't have a setup for connecting you with a narrator, it hasn't been something I've really I've really pursued. But they do seem to be reputable. They just don't do the piece of the puzzle that I use ACX to do, which is pair me with a narrator that I don't pay cash up front for.
AKA, we're authors, we're fucking lazy, do as much of the work for us as possible, and we'll use you.
Or we're publishers, we're cheap as fuck.
All I want you to do is everything for free. Okay? It's not much to ask.
Steve, you're ready to open a publishing house.
Here's what I'm putting on the table. You do all the work. Bye now.
You do all the work, I'll send you a piece of the money.
God damn, this is what I've been doing wrong all along.
Okay, so I think we've gone through a lot of the audiobook stuff. We did the negative one earlier on, the mistakes we see a lot. I thought it would be nice to end things off on a more positive note. General advice or lessons learned. You know, we've all put in a fair amount of time and energy into audiobooks now. I assume we've all got some mistakes and things that we can pass on to those coming after us so they don't have to learn the hard way. So lessons learned, good advice, general audiobook tips.
Don't be afraid of the green narrator. If you're an author with only 1 or 2 books under your belt and the only auditions you're getting for your for your royalty share project are from narrators that only have 1 or 2 audiobooks under their belt, it may very well be that you can grow your careers together and develop a long-term, mutually beneficial relationship. So don't shit on somebody because they're not super famous and don't have a ton of audios on their shelf. You might not be ready to work with somebody who has a shit ton of audios on their shelf and is super famous. Be willing to grow along with your producer and your narrator.
Also, everybody has to start somewhere.
Yeah, especially if you've got one book. You know, don't get too ahead of yourself.
Yeah.
I mean, look back 6 years when people kept trying to decide who was who, whether Rick's covers were mine or my covers were Rick's. And now look at how we've grown, where people are trying to decide if Rick is Robert Bevan or Robert Bevan is Rick.
Stepped it up a level.
Yeah. No offense, but I still miss your old Black Knight covers.
I think
those
you
were
can
slick.
I think you can buy copies of those books used on Amazon for like $700 or something.
Yeah, I might be holding off on that one.
Worth
If
every
anybody
penny.
wants to pay $700, fucking email me. I have a couple.
Hell, he'll give it to you for $500. He's that good of a guy.
I didn't say that.
My advice would be do a better job than me of proofing your books, because especially fantasy fans, holy shit, you miss one mispronunciation of Super Saiyan and nobody will ever let you forget about it ever.
Is that how you pronounce it? Is it Saiyan?
Yes.
Oh, okay. I always thought it was Cyan because of the way it was spelled.
I hate to say it. A few Saiyans made it into my stuff, because once again, I'm not a very good audio proofer.
Jesus, Rick.
And yes, and let me tell you, it is one of those things that, like, if I die being a New York Times bestseller, having like a Game of Thrones like series, somebody will show up and spray paint on my tombstone. It's saying with an A, not an I.
Doesn't even know what Goku is.
That'll be me. That'll be me doing that. Okay, I've got an advice that kind of tags in with John's a little bit. Not so much the green narrator part, but invest in your narrator. Like, give a shit. Elevate them. They are someone you are working with, and especially on a series. I love inviting my narrators onto launch day parties. I try to, if I see them doing anything, shout them out, retweet them. You're in a partnership. They are tied to your book. They are tied to your brand. Aside from just try to be a nice person to people you work with, which no fucking shit. That's just basic common courtesy. You want your narrators to succeed because they are the voices of your characters. And just like I think it was either John or Rick said earlier, that sometimes a narrator will bring people onto the property more than the property itself. if your narrators are growing, then, you know, that works for you too. A rising tide lifts all boats. So it's always mind-boggling to me, the number of people who just don't give their narrators any attention or appreciation.
Speaking of not paying attention to you. Now, that was actually very good advice for me, because my, like I say, most of the time, the people come to me were first-timers, and I was just very impressed. Like I say, I didn't get any what I would call bad auditions at all. I was very impressed with the way, particularly Shoot the Dead, the guy I got was a young dude who's trying his first audiobook, I think it was, and he just nailed everything I expected. So I just thought, well, the product's where it need to be. I never really kind of chased the guy up for anything. You know, I don't even know what he's up to at the moment. I was just kind of like, excellent. My product is turning out better than I could have hoped, for no money up front. And I don't know what the guy's doing now at all. So I should definitely take that advice.
He's listening to this podcast having just sold both of his kidneys. He's like, thanks, Steve. It's about fucking time.
Good job, by the way, buddy.
I mean, as long as you still have one, you're fine. It'll be fine.
But yeah, the other advice, I think, kind of covered everything.
Yeah.
You know, make sure they're not making any unattractive mouth noises.
Or other noises.
Yeah, it's a tip for all you narrators out there. If you can hear it, the mic can hear it.
Yeah.
I like that.
Like, do
That's a good one.
some research into your genre to see how big it is first. I mean, I've heard that, like, you know, not a lot of people really want to listen to their erotica, like, you know, out loud. But here's the thing, you know, if there's a market for it, it's something as an author that you probably want to think about pursuing, but pursue it the right way. Don't, like, you know, we've given all the advice. Don't do it yourself and say, well, it'll be just as good. Don't, like, you know, don't treat your, like, you know, your like narrators like crap. It's, if you can get a toehold in the audio market, it can be an awesome friggin' thing.
Yeah, it's a wonderful, growing, booming. I mean, there's not a lot of places in life, and especially in this industry, where there's still opportunity to get in at a near, I wouldn't say ground floor, but like at the early point of something. And the audio market is one of those opportunities still. It's still not as big by, God, tens of degrees by what it will be eventually. Like, it's very clear looking at it right now that is going to be a massive market force in the decades to come.
Absolutely. And if you're ignoring audio because you think that there's no way you can get a decent narrator for a royalty share and you can't afford it, you can. They're still out there. You just may have to market a little more that you're looking for narrators on your social media and things like that. And you can find good narrators, but don't sleep on audio. It's a mistake I see way too many authors making, is just ignoring the market because they either think it'll be too hard or they think there's no money in it.
Yeah, I underestimated it. The only reason I got Bill done was just to say, hey, I have an audiobook. You know, and then like a week later, my narrator's like emailing me. He's like, dude, we like sold 50 of them. I was like, really?
Yeah, I mean, I can't think of any reason why you wouldn't just bang it up on ACX as soon as you publish, just to see if you get a bite. I mean, why not?
Probably because it's scary. I mean, truly, like, so much of this industry is arcane and strange, and if you haven't done it before, it's fucking intimidating. Like, I was scared as shit to win ACX the first time that I was gonna fuck something up and just have a terrible version of an audiobook out there. So yeah, like, it can absolutely be intimidating, and if you're one of the folks who's holding off because of that, I understand and I get it, but at the same time, it doesn't get any easier by waiting.
Yes. So reach out to Drew Hayes, and he will be your personal mentor in this journey.
I don't even have the time to do the shit I'm supposed to do.
Yeah, everything is scary the first time you do it.
Yeah. But hopefully we've given enough insight on this episode that you at least understand the baseline mechanics, and it isn't completely incomprehensible anymore. That is always the goal, is to try and peel back some of the curtains. We know this industry isn't always great at transparency, so by God, we can be.
If nothing else, we are transparent.
Yeah. Mostly because we're so shallow, we're basically see-through.
Yes. And don't forget to buy your tickets to A&D Con in Las Vegas.
Yeah.
You can find that link at authorsanddragons.com.
And hey, listen to the podcast, which you're already doing. Oh God, we're in an audio plug spiral.
Excellent.
Oh man.
The shill circle is complete.
I think that's probably the best place we're going to get to wrap it up for this week. Thank you all for tuning in and joining us for this audiobook discussion. If there's stuff you want to know more about that we didn't cover, let us know. Facebook.com/AuthorsAndDragons, or come into the Discord at Patreon.com/AuthorsAndDragons, and then follow it into the Discord. Because we're always happy to do more on these topics if that's what you want to know. We are very nakedly pandering, so if that's a topic you want, we'll talk about it.
Hopefully, though, not pandering naked.
Indeed. No.
Well, we'll see what the listeners want, all right?
Yeah, that's a higher Patreon tier for sure.
Or lower.
Now you have to pay enough for us to be able to scrub the memories.
And
we're naked except for blindfolds, so we don't have to see each
ourselves. Oh, we went different ways with that joke.
Yeah. If we hit $5,000 a month, we will put our pants back on.
For every $1,000 more, I will add a layer of clothing.
I will not. I live in fucking North Carolina, and I have to turn the air conditioning off to record this shit.
Oh, you poor man. We'll fire it back up, because I think we are done with this episode of SideQuest. Folks, we will see you next week with an episode of Authors and Dragons. Until next time, bye.
Bye.
Bye.